You are standing where Rome believed nothing could stand. The air is thin, it burns your lungs with every breath. Snow crunches beneath your feet, then gives way to ice, then to empty space. One misstep and you disappear into the clouds below. Around you are the remains of an army that should not exist here, men frozen where they fell, faces twisted in shock, fingers blackened and snapped off by the cold. Farther along the path, massive shapes lie motionless, war elephants, their bodies slumped against the mountain like offerings left to an uncaring god. This is not a road, it is a punishment corridor carved into the sky. And yet, the army keeps moving. They descend out of the Alps slowly, painfully, dragging what is left of themselves behind them. Every step south is a violation of nature, of reason, of everything Rome believes about the world. These mountains were supposed to be the limit, the edge of possibility, the wall that made Rome untouchable. That wall has just failed. At the front of the column walks a man who does not look back at the dead. He does not count losses. He does not slow. He stares only toward the lowlands, toward Italy, toward the city that sleeps in certainty. He is not here to conquer Rome in the way Rome understands conquest. He is here to break its sense of safety, to punish it for believing it could never be reached. Rome will soon hear rumors, then reports, then panic. An enemy has come from the direction no enemy should ever come from, not by sea, not by road, but over the roof of the world itself. History will later call this man a general. But in this moment, you understand the truth before Rome does. This is not a war. This is wrath walking toward Rome. If you're still here, it means you're ready to confront the darkest moments history tries to soften. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history, or explain in the comments why you'd rather look away now. The wrath did not begin in the mountains. It began decades earlier, far from ice and snow, in a place heavy with heat and smoke. You are a child now, barely old enough to understand war, but old enough to feel the weight of expectation pressing down on your chest. The temple is dark, its stone walls blackened by centuries of soot. Incense coils through the air, thick and suffocating, clinging to your skin and tongue. It smells of resin, ash, and blood. Somewhere nearby, fire crackles softly, steady and patient. This is the temple of Baal-Hamon, a god who does not listen to excuses. Priests move in silence, their faces unreadable, their footsteps echoing faintly against the stone. At the center of the chamber stands an altar slick with fresh sacrifice. An animal lies there, its body still warm, its blood pooling and steaming as it runs into carved grooves worn smooth by generations of offerings. This is not symbolism, this is transaction. In the Punic world, words spoken here do not fade, they bind. Your father stands beside you, Hannibal Barca, general, commander, a man who has watched Rome take everything without consequence. He does not kneel, he does not beg the gods. He turns to you and places your small hand on the sacrificial body. You feel the heat of it, the wetness, the undeniable reality of death. And then he makes you swear. Not loyalty, not courage, not obedience. Hatred. Eternal hatred of Rome. The words are simple, but their meaning is absolute. In this world, an oath is not a promise to another human being. It is a contract with the divine. To break it is to invite ruin, not just for yourself, but for your bloodline. The gods are witnesses now. They have been paid. They will remember. At that moment, your life narrows, all other futures collapse. You are no longer just a child. You are a vessel, a sentence written in flesh. Rome does not know this ceremony is happening. Rome does not hear the vow echoing off the stone. Rome continues to believe its victories are permanent, its treaties final, its enemies pacified. It has no idea it has just been named in a sacred curse. Because this hatred is not emotional, it is legal, it is religious, it is encoded into the structure of the universe as you have been taught to understand it. Rome is not an opponent. Rome is an offense that must be corrected. From this moment forward, every breath you take serves one purpose. And the most dangerous part is this: Rome will never see you coming as a consequence, only as a man. If you're still listening, Understand what this channel exists to uncover. This is not history meant to comfort you. This is history meant to unsettle you. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history, and if you choose not to, the comments are waiting for you to explain why a sacred oath to destroy an empire makes you uncomfortable. The gods have already heard the vow. Rome just hasn't yet. Rome does not know it yet, but it has already made its greatest enemy. The war ends without triumph. There is no final charge, no decisive annihilation, just ink on parchment, just terms, just numbers. This is how Rome prefers to kill, slowly, quietly, without blood on its own hands. Carthage stands defeated, not because it was crushed in battle, but because it was bled dry by agreement. The First Punic War is over, and Rome dictates the peace as if it were a moral victory. Sicily is taken first, stripped away and absorbed. Sardinia follows soon after, seized when Carthage is too weak to resist. Each loss is framed as lawful, each theft wrapped in legality. Then comes the indemnity. Silver measured not in coins but in weight, talents of it, an amount so vast it cannot be imagined, only felt over time. For years, Carthage must pay Rome simply for the privilege of being allowed to exist. Ships are sold, taxes rise, markets tighten, families feel the pressure long before generals do. This is not conquest, this is economic suffocation. Rome calls it diplomacy. But diplomacy, when enforced by hunger, is violence by other means. Carthage's politicians sign because they have no choice. They trade survival today for misery tomorrow, and while they negotiate, one man watches in silence. Hannibal Barca, undefeated in the field, outmaneuvered not by Roman soldiers, but by Roman patience. He understands something the Senate in Carthage refuses to accept. Rome does not want peace. Rome wants time. Time to grow stronger. Time to make Carthage dependent. Time to ensure the next war is impossible to survive. This is not an enemy that stops when it wins. This is an enemy that feeds on weakness. Hamilcar does not rage publicly, he does not rebel, he does not waste his remaining strength on a hopeless confrontation. Instead, he does something far more dangerous. He looks to the future, he looks to his son. The boy who placed his hand on blood. The boy who swore hatred before the gods. Rome believes it has punished Carthage. In truth, it has only planted the conditions necessary for revenge. The humiliation lingers. Every shipment of silver sent north is a reminder. Every lost island is an open wound. Every Roman demand reinforces the lesson that submission will never be enough. This is how Rome creates its own executioner. Not through cruelty in battle, but through the arrogance of victory, through the belief that enemies, once beaten, stay beaten, through the slow violence of treaties designed to break a people without drawing a sword. Hannibal grows up inside this pressure, inside this debt, inside this humiliation that never ends. His wrath is not impulsive, it is patient. It matures alongside him, sharpened by every Roman demand, every reminder that Carthage's suffering is intentional. This is not vengeance delayed because of weakness. It is vengeance delayed because it must be perfect. If you're still listening, ask yourself why stories like this are rarely told this way. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history, or step into the comments and explain why economic warfare, humiliation, and slow death dressed as diplomacy don't disturb you enough to stay. Hannibal is not raised in palaces. He is raised in camps that smell of sweat, iron, and old blood, among men who sleep on bare ground and wake before dawn to march until their feet bleed. This is not an education meant to make him admired. It is meant to make him endured. From the beginning, he eats what the soldiers eat: hard bread, salted meat, rations measured not for comfort but for survival. When food runs short, it runs short for everyone. When rain turns the ground to mud, he lies in it beside them. When cold settles into bone, it settles into his as well. Rank does not protect him from hardship. Privilege is deliberately stripped away. This is discipline through suffering. Hamilcar understands something Rome does not. Loyalty cannot be commanded. It cannot be purchased. It can only be forged where pain is shared. So Hannibal grows up learning the weight of armor on long marches. The exhaustion of holding formation, the quiet resentment that builds when leaders stay warm while others freeze. He is taught to never be that kind of leader. Around him is an army that should not work. Libyans hardened by desert heat, Iberians brutal and stubborn, Numidian cavalry raised in motion, Gauls who fight with fury and pride, different languages, different gods, different customs. Rome believes such armies collapse under their own contradictions. Hannibal learns how to bind them. He listens, he learns their languages, he understands what each group fears, what each group respects. Orders are not barked, they are earned. Punishments are not arbitrary, rewards are not empty. When discipline is enforced, it is enforced evenly. When suffering comes, it comes to all. This army does not follow a flag. It follows a man who bleeds beside it. Across the sea, Roman commanders learn war in comfort. Sons of senators study rhetoric, not terrain. They inherit authority without earning it. Their soldiers fight because law demands it, not because trust binds them. Roman discipline is rigid. Punic discipline is personal. This difference will decide everything. By the time Hannibal reaches adulthood, he is no longer a boy shaped by hatred alone. He is something more precise, more dangerous. A mind trained to endure deprivation, to command diversity, to turn hardship into cohesion. He is calm under pressure because pressure is all he has ever known. He is not being prepared to rule. He is being prepared to punish. Every march hardens him. Every shortage teaches restraint. Every night among the soldiers reinforces the same lesson. Pain, when shared, becomes loyalty, and loyalty, once earned, does not break. Rome will face this army and misunderstand it completely. They will see foreigners, mercenaries, barbarians. What they will not see is the bond beneath the surface, the weapon forged quietly, patiently, out of shared suffering. If you've stayed with this story this far, you already know this isn't normal history. This channel exists to uncover the darkest punishments humanity has inflicted, slowly, deliberately, and often without remorse. If you leave now without subscribing to the darkest punishments in history, you're choosing comfort over truth. And if that choice unsettles you, the comments are open. The decision is made without ceremony. No council, no debate, no warning sent ahead. Hannibal turns his army north, toward the Alps. Not the roads Rome expects, not the coast where fleets can shadow him, but upward, into a place maps refuse to describe, a place spoken of in rumor and fear, a place where armies do not go because armies do not come back. This is not a march, it is a sentence. The Alps do not resist gently, they strip flesh from bone with indifference. The paths narrow until a single misstep means erasure. Supplies vanish faster than they can be replaced. Grain freezes solid. Animals collapse where they stand. Men wake unable to feel their feet, only to discover later that feeling is gone because the flesh is gone. Frostbite does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, then claims fingers, toes, ears. Blackened skin cracks and falls away. Those who stop moving do not rest. They harden into the landscape, preserved where they failed. The mountain keeps them. Food becomes memory. Starvation gnaws slowly, weakening bodies before it breaks spirits. Discipline tightens as hunger spreads. Theft is punished. Hesitation is punished. Collapse is punished. Hannibal does not soften the march, he hardens it. Because mercy here would kill them all. Then the mountains begin to move. Landslides roar down without warning, stones smashing into armor, men, animals, dragging entire sections of the column into nothingness. Screams vanish before they reach ears. Paths that existed hours earlier are simply gone. Ahead, hostile tribes watch from the heights, waiting. They do not fight openly. They ambush from above, rolling boulders, hurling spears, letting gravity finish what weapons begin. This is vertical warfare. Hannibal responds without hesitation. Light infantry claw their way up sheer rock faces to seize high ground. They fight hand to hand on ice-slick ledges where victory and death are separated by inches. Bodies fall for seconds before sound catches up. The elephants suffer worst of all. Massive creatures bred for terror on flat ground now slip, panic, collapse. Their weight becomes a curse. Some break legs, some suffocate in snow, others refuse to move at all, eyes rolling, breath steaming, until they are abandoned where they stand. Each death is a loss Hannibal accepts without pause. Because this march is not about preservation. It is about proof. Every man who survives the Alps becomes something Rome has never faced before, stripped of illusion, hardened beyond fear, bound not by hope but by endurance. Hannibal is punishing his own army, not out of cruelty but design. Those who emerge will follow him anywhere. Those who cannot were never meant to see Italy. This is survival as a moral test. Not everyone deserves to cross. When the army finally descends, it is half its former size, gaunt, scarred, reduced, but alive, and standing on Italian soil where Rome swore no enemy could ever stand. Rome built its confidence on geography. Hannibal has just executed that belief. If you're still listening, understand this moment. An entire army is being sacrificed to create terror that will last generations. This is the kind of punishment history prefers to forget. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history, or step into the comments and explain why watching men die so Rome could learn fear isn't enough to keep you here. Hannibal does not announce himself with battle. He lets Italy feel him first. The army moves like a shadow across the countryside, never staying long enough to be cornered, never committing to a fight Rome is desperate to have. Fields burn in the distance. Smoke rises in slow columns, visible for miles, announcing that something has gone terribly wrong. Grain stores are emptied or set alight. Olive groves, trees that take generations to mature, are hacked down in hours. Livestock are slaughtered where they stand, left rotting in the open so the smell carries. This is not random destruction. It is calculated humiliation. Roman farmers flee their homes with whatever they can carry, looking back only to see their livelihoods erased. Villages empty before the legions ever arrive. Children learn fear before they learn the enemy's name. This is war waged not against soldiers, but against certainty, against the belief that Rome protects those who submit to it. And the legions are there, close, always close. Roman armies shadow Hannibal's movements, heavy with armor, eager for confrontation. Their commanders beg for battle. They shout challenges across valleys. They send scouts to provoke engagement. Hannibal ignores them completely. He marches past their camps in full view, banners visible, fires lit deliberately close, then vanishes before dawn. Each refusal is an insult. Roman military culture is built on honor, on decisive action, on the idea that strength is proven face to face. Hannibal understands this better than they do. He denies them the one thing they crave, the chance to restore control. Every burned farm is a reminder that Rome's power means nothing if it cannot protect its own land. The Senate grows restless, commanders grow reckless, soldiers grow angry, discipline erodes as frustration replaces strategy. Hannibal does not need to defeat the legions, he only needs to make them chase him. And they do. Rome's pride becomes a weapon turned inward. Impatience spreads upward through the chain of command. Reconnaissance is rushed. Warnings are dismissed. Caution is mocked as cowardice. Hannibal watches all of it unfold, measuring their anger, feeding it just enough destruction to keep them moving. This is psychological torture, disguised as restraint. By refusing battle, Hannibal forces Rome to fight itself, to argue, to panic, to make mistakes. Every day without engagement is another day Rome looks weak in the eyes of its own people. Every day Hannibal roams freely is another fracture in Rome's sense of inevitability. The blood has not yet flowed in rivers. But Rome is already bleeding. If you're still here, recognize what's happening. This is how empires are broken before swords ever clash. If this kind of punishment unsettles you, it should. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history, or go to the comments and explain why watching an empire unravel from the inside isn't enough to make you stay. What follows is not a battle. It is a disappearance. At dawn, the Roman army marches into a valley it does not understand, led by a man who refuses to be cautious. Consul Gaius Flaminius does not slow. He does not scout properly. He does not wait for reinforcements. He has been humiliated for months, and humiliation has made him deaf. Lake Trasimene lies to his right, wide, calm, indifferent. Low hills press in on the other side. A narrow road threads the space between water and slope, forcing the army into a stretched column. No room to maneuver, no space to turn, no escape routes worth the name. Fog settles in thick and deliberate, not a dramatic mist, an erasing fog. It swallows distance, it muffles sound, it reduces the world to a few paces of uncertainty. Shields scrape, sandals slip on damp earth. Orders are passed hand to shoulder, already distorted. The Romans cannot see the trap. Hannibal can see everything. His forces are already in position, hidden along the ridgelines, crouched behind trees and rock, silent for hours. Infantry blocks the road ahead. Cavalry seals the rear. Light troops line the slopes like a closing jaw. No horns, no warning, no declaration. When the signal comes, it is not heard by the Romans at all. It begins everywhere at once. Weapons crash down from the fog. Javelins tear into ranks that have not even formed. Horses slam into the rear, cutting off retreat before the front understands what is happening. Men try to raise shields, but there is no direction to face. Attacks come from above, from behind, from the side. The terrain itself fights them. This is slaughter without resistance, not because the soldiers are weak, but because resistance is impossible. Units cannot assemble. Centurions cannot see their standards. Commands dissolve into screams. The Roman formation, its greatest strength, never exists. Soldiers fight as individuals, then as pairs, then not at all. Many are pushed into the lake, dragged down by armor, drowning without ever seeing an enemy. Flaminius rides forward, trying to impose order where order cannot exist. He shouts himself hoarse. He charges blindly into the fog, sword raised, insisting on courage as if courage can correct geometry. He is cut down where he stands, surrounded, overwhelmed, killed without ceremony. The consul of Rome dies nameless in the mist. And something else happens, something no one notices until later. An earthquake strikes the region, a real one, strong enough to topple buildings miles away, to crack roads, to shift hillsides. No Roman at Trasimene feels it. They are too busy dying. For 3 hours the killing continues. Not a clash, not a contest, an execution stretched across terrain. By the time the fog lifts, the road is no longer visible beneath bodies. The lake is choked with corpses and broken shields, the water darkened, the shoreline transformed into a grave. Nearly an entire Roman army is erased. This is not punishment for defeat. This is punishment for arrogance. Rome believed its presence alone was enough, that pursuit was courage, that impatience was strength. Hannibal designs Trasimene as a lesson written in blood. Power without restraint is not power at all, it is vulnerability. No warning was given. No mercy was required. And now pause here. Because this is where history usually becomes polite. History books sanitize this. They call it a defeat. They say ambush and move on. This channel does not. If this makes you uncomfortable, that is the point. You are not supposed to consume this comfortably. You are watching thousands of men die without ever forming a line of battle. You are watching an empire punished not by chance, but by its own character. And if you are not subscribed, ask yourself why. Because watching this unfold, absorbing the horror, and then walking away without engagement is its own kind of evasion. People who consume brutality but refuse accountability always do the same thing. They look, they flinch, and they leave. If that's you, go to the comments and say it out loud. Confess why you're watching but won't stay. And if you understand what you're seeing, if you understand that this is not spectacle but consequence, then subscribe to the darkest punishments in history. Because Trasimene is not the end. It is proof. And Rome is about to learn that proof can be repeated. After Trasimene, Rome stops pretending this is a contest of generals. It becomes a problem to be crushed by mass. The Senate does not look inward. It does not slow down. It does what empires always do when subtlety humiliates them. It escalates. Rome raises an army so large it strains the Republic's ability to feed it. 8 legions, allied contingents stacked on top, close to 80,000 men pressed into one solution. Overwhelm him. Roman doctrine has always been simple, direct, violent. You push forward, you break the enemy's center, you let weight decide what intelligence refuses to wait for. This method built Rome's confidence, and now that confidence demands vindication. They meet Hannibal on the plain near Cannae, flat, open, familiar, no fog, no hills, no excuses. The kind of ground Romans trust because it removes ambiguity. The kind of ground where numbers are supposed to speak loudest. Hannibal sees the army assembling and understands something immediately. They have not come to fight him. They have come to erase the memory of fear. The Roman line forms deep, unnaturally deep, legion behind legion, shields overlapping, men packed so tightly that movement itself becomes difficult. Senators ride with the army, not as commanders, but as witnesses. They want to be seen when the reckoning comes. They want to stand inside inevitability. Hannibal does not oppose their certainty. He reshapes it. His center advances deliberately weak, not straight, but bowed outward convex like a chest offered for impact. Gauls and Iberians take the front, instructed not to hold forever, only long enough. The wings, African infantry hardened by years of war, remain set back, angled, waiting. Cavalry guards the flanks, light and heavy, already positioned to move. The Romans see the bulge and smile. This is what they know how to kill. The signal is given, the Roman mass surges forward, and immediately their own formation begins to betray them. The deeper they push, the less room they have to swing a sword, the more bodies behind them, the less space to retreat. Pressure builds from every side, but always forward, always into the curve. They are winning, or they think they are. Hannibal's center bends, slowly, precisely, step by step. It retreats without breaking, drawing the Roman weight inward, funneling it, compressing it. The convex line becomes flat, then concave, then something else entirely, a pocket. At the moment, the Romans commit fully. When withdrawal is no longer an option, the wings move. African infantry pivots inward, striking the exposed Roman flanks like doors slamming shut. At the same time, the cavalry returns, not to harass, not to skirmish, but to seal. The rear collapses, the exit vanishes. The Roman army is no longer a formation. It is a container. Men are pressed chest to back, shield to spine. Those at the center cannot raise their arms. Those at the edges are cut down first, not as enemies, but as walls. As the perimeter tightens, the pressure increases. Bodies fall, and the living step into the space without choice. This is not chaos. This is physics. Oxygen thins, heat rises, blood slicks the ground until footing disappears entirely. Soldiers suffocate standing upright, lungs unable to expand. Others die without wounds, crushed by their own army's weight. Screams diminish, not because the killing slows, but because the air is gone. Hannibal's men kill methodically, not wildly, thrusts, not swings, short blades pushed into gaps between armor, withdraw, step forward, repeat, a killing rate so steady it becomes mechanical. Thousands die per hour, hundreds per minute. This is annihilation performed at scale. Roman senators die where they stand, surrounded by their own legions, indistinguishable in death from the men they ordered forward. No privilege survives compression. Rank collapses under weight. Authority has no shape when space itself is denied. By afternoon, the sun looks down on something that no longer resembles a battle. It is an organism being dismantled. By evening, the ground is layered with bodies so dense that messengers walk across them without touching earth. The killing stops not because mercy intervenes, but because there is no one left to kill. Cannae does not break Rome tactically. It obliterates it psychologically. The Republic loses not just soldiers, but the belief that numbers guarantee safety, that courage expressed as mass is strength, that the world yields to those who push hardest. Hannibal does not defeat Rome's army. He exposes its mind. Pause here, because this is where the scale becomes uncomfortable. If you are still watching, understand this: Cannae is not remembered because of genius. It is remembered because it proves how easily systems turn people into material, how doctrine, when worshipped, becomes a killing machine that consumes its own operators. If this feels heavy, it should. And if you are not subscribed, ask yourself why you are willing to witness industrialized death, but unwilling to commit to understanding it. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history. Because what follows is not more killing. It is something worse. It is survival. After Cannae, Rome does not scream. It goes silent. The messengers arrive one by one, their numbers thinning, their words shortening. No triumphs to announce, no lists of survivors to read, just absence, just the arithmetic of loss becoming impossible to hide. The city understands before it is told. And the first thing Rome does is forbid grief. Public mourning is banned, funerals are restricted, wailing in the streets is treated as a threat to order. Black clothing becomes suspect. Tears are framed as weakness, not because Rome is strong, but because it is afraid of what grief might reveal. If the people are allowed to mourn, they might ask why. So Rome seals its face and calls it discipline. Inside the Senate, the language changes. Men stop speaking of honor and start speaking of survival. The Republic has lost armies before, but never like this. Never in a way that suggests the system itself is flawed. Never in a way that feels intentional. Hannibal has not just killed Romans. He has humiliated Rome's self-image. And humiliation demands transformation. 2 men and 2 women are buried alive in the Forum. Not criminals, not enemies, selected victims, an old ritual dragged back from the edges of memory. Human sacrifice performed in the civic heart of the Republic, justified as necessity. The gods must be paid. This is what Rome tells itself. It is easier to feed bodies to the earth than to admit the earth is no longer listening. Desperation widens, slaves are armed, criminals are conscripted, men previously considered unworthy of bearing weapons are handed shields and told they are Rome now. Status collapses under fear. The boundaries that defined Roman identity blur, not in pursuit of justice, but in panic. Citizens who once defined themselves by exclusion now cling to inclusion as a last defense. Nothing is sacred, except survival. And then there are the prisoners. Tens of thousands of Romans captured at Cannae, alive, waiting. Hannibal offers terms, ransom, negotiation, the old rules of war still available, still possible. The Senate refuses. Not because it cannot pay, because it will not. To ransom the prisoners would be to admit vulnerability, to acknowledge that Roman lives have value beyond their usefulness. So the Senate declares that those captured deserved their fate, that survival in defeat is dishonor, that Rome does not bargain for the broken. The prisoners are abandoned deliberately. This is not strategy. It is purification. Rome decides that mercy is a liability it can no longer afford. In saving itself, it amputates its conscience. Pause here, because this is where the story turns inward. If you are still watching, understand this: empires do not become cruel when they are strong. They become cruel when they are afraid. What you are witnessing is not resilience, it is moral collapse disguised as resolve. If this unsettles you, good. This channel exists to strip away the language that makes brutality sound necessary. Hannibal has not finished punishing Rome, and Rome is about to punish itself even more thoroughly. After Cannae, Rome stops chasing Hannibal. Not because it forgives him, because it finally understands him. The Republic hands command to men who promise not victory, but endurance. The strategy is named after Fabius Maximus, but its logic is older than Rome itself. Deny the enemy resolution, refuse the moment of brilliance, turn genius into a liability. No battles, no glory, no decisive engagement. Only subtraction. Roman armies still move, but never close enough. They shadow Hannibal at a distance, cutting off foraging parties, burning crops ahead of his march, emptying storehouses, poisoning wells. Villages are evacuated before he arrives, then destroyed by Roman hands. Not to deny Hannibal resources, to deny him meaning. This is war turned inward. Roman civilians watch their own land burn, their own harvests ruined, their own homes dismantled by the state that claims to protect them. The punishment shifts from spectacle to procedure. Endure this now, or endure annihilation later. That is the bargain Rome offers its people. Hannibal is not defeated. He is contained. Every movement is observed, every decision narrowed. His victories no longer change the war's direction, they only extend it. Without siege equipment, without reinforcements from Carthage, without a city willing to defect decisively, his army survives, but does not advance. Time replaces violence, and time is Rome's most reliable weapon. Years pass, seasons grind down morale, veterans die of age, illness, exhaustion, horses are irreplaceable, supplies become thinner, allies drift away not from fear, but from boredom. The absence of climax drains loyalty faster than terror ever could. Hannibal remains undefeated, and increasingly irrelevant. This is the punishment Rome chooses because it cannot risk another Cannae. The Republic accepts stagnation as the price of survival. It cages Hannibal inside Italy, not with walls, but with patience. A genius can solve problems. He cannot solve time. The war becomes a machine that converts brilliance into attrition. Every day Hannibal lives is another day his presence fails to matter. Rome rebuilds legions quietly, methodically, without ceremony. Children grow into soldiers while he waits. The Republic hardens itself around his shadow. This is not triumph. It is suffocation. Pause here. Because this is the moment power reveals its most dangerous instinct. If it cannot destroy you, it will exhaust you. If you're still watching, recognize the shift. This is no longer about Hannibal. It is about systems learning how to neutralize exceptional individuals without ever confronting them directly. If this sounds familiar, it should. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history. Because the final punishment is not death. It is erasure. And that is where this story ends. Rome does not defeat Hannibal by forgetting him. It defeats him by copying him. While Hannibal is contained in Italy, the Republic looks elsewhere, away from the spectacle, away from the legend, toward the machinery that keeps him alive. The Senate empowers a young commander most men do not yet trust. Publius Cornelius Scipio is not chosen for seniority. He is chosen because he listens. Scipio studies Hannibal the way a physician studies a disease, not to admire it, but to understand how it spreads. He reads reports, he interviews survivors, he memorizes patterns. He learns that Hannibal wins not by strength alone, but by anticipation, by arriving where Rome expects safety, by turning terrain, timing, and morale into weapons. And then Scipio goes to Spain. Not to fight Hannibal, to dismantle him. Spain is Carthage's lung, its mines, its ports, its recruitment ground. As long as Spain feeds Carthage, Hannibal can exist as a threat, even trapped. Scipio does not announce his intentions with prolonged campaigns. He moves fast, deliberately, almost recklessly. He does not march on enemy armies. He marches on their certainty. New Carthage falls not because its walls are weak, but because Scipio refuses to behave predictably. He strikes when tides allow passage thought impossible. He attacks from directions dismissed as impassable. He exploits knowledge others overlook. Hannibal would recognize the method immediately. The city collapses in a single, precise blow. Rome captures stockpiles, arsenals, hostages, and the administrative heart of Carthaginian Spain. In one move, Scipio severs the supply chain that sustains the war. No reinforcements. No money. No replacement commanders. Carthage begins to suffocate from a distance. Scipio does not linger. He consolidates, reorganizes, absorbs local alliances. He wins not by terror, but by control. Where Hannibal destabilized, Scipio stabilizes. Where Hannibal thrived on motion, Scipio imposes structure. Rome has learned. It has taken Hannibal's brilliance, stripped it of mercy, and embedded it into a system. This is the most dangerous transformation of all. When an empire learns from the man who nearly killed it, it does not become wiser. It becomes sharper. Pause here. Because this is the moment the story stops being about resistance and starts being about inheritance. If you are still watching, understand this. The greatest threat to power is not the rebel, it is the apprentice. Because the mirror is now complete. And what follows is not a battle between equals. It is an execution with lessons learned. Hannibal learns the truth without ceremony. There is no messenger worthy of the moment, no formal announcement, no negotiation, just an object thrown into the dirt outside his camp. A severed head. Hasdrubal, his brother, the last reinforcement, the final variable that made survival feel temporary instead of terminal. Rome has hunted him down in northern Italy, crushed his army before the two brothers could reunite, and chosen not efficiency, but message. They send the head forward. This is not battlefield brutality. This is communication. Hannibal recognizes the face immediately, not because it is intact, it isn't, but because memory does not need detail. He orders it cleaned. He stares at it longer than anyone expects. There is no public grief, no rage, no spectacle. Just comprehension. In that moment, Hannibal understands that the war has ended everywhere except in form, that the cage has closed completely, that Rome has stopped reacting and started deciding. This is not vengeance, it is procedure. Wrath has nowhere to go. And so it turns inward. From this point on, Hannibal still fights, but without expectation. Movements become smaller, decisions more cautious, not because he is afraid, but because inevitability has replaced ambition. He knows now that brilliance cannot outpace replacement, that genius cannot reproduce itself fast enough to outlive a system designed to wait. The war does not need to kill him. It only needs to continue. Pause here, because this is where punishment becomes intimate. If you are still watching, understand this. Power does not always destroy you directly. Sometimes it removes the last reason you had to resist. Sometimes it kills the future in front of you and waits for your present to collapse. And this is where I need to speak to you directly. This channel exists for stories most people can't stomach. Stories where punishment is not loud but precise, where power does not rage, it administers. If you are still here and still not subscribed, you are avoiding something, not the content, but the recognition. Go to the comments and explain why. Say why you're willing to witness psychological death, but unwilling to commit to understanding it. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history. Because what comes next is not Hannibal's end. It is Rome's inheritance of everything he taught them. Hannibal leaves Italy quietly. No triumph, no pursuit, no ceremony. The war that consumed a generation exhales and shifts continents. Rome does not chase him across the sea in anger. it sends Scipio with purpose. Africa becomes the final theater, not because it matters strategically, but because it matters psychologically. The war must end where Carthage can feel it. Before the battle, the two men meet. Not as enemies foaming with hatred, but as mirrors. Hannibal sees himself in Scipio, not the man he was, but the man Rome has learned how to manufacture. Scipio studies Hannibal without reverence, without illusion. There is no speech worth recording, no challenge, just recognition. They part knowing this will not be decided by courage. It will be decided by adaptation. At Zama, Hannibal arranges his army carefully, veterans at the rear, new levies in front, war elephants positioned to break Roman order the way Roman mass once did. It is a familiar solution: force, shock, compression. Rome does not panic. Scipio has already removed fear from the equation. The elephants charge and fail. Roman soldiers open lanes deliberately, horns blaring, directing the animals past instead of into their lines. Some elephants turn back, trampling Carthaginian troops instead. The weapon becomes a liability. Chaos spreads in the wrong direction. This is not chance. This is study. Roman infantry advances in controlled blocks, spacing adjusted, formations flexible. Cavalry moves not for glory, but for timing. Every maneuver feels restrained, because Rome is no longer proving anything. It is applying a lesson. When the lines meet, the fighting is brutal but contained. No wild pursuit, no overextension, no hunger for spectacle. The veterans Hannibal saved for last find themselves outnumbered, pressured, enveloped, not by brilliance, but by discipline. Hannibal watches his own doctrine executed against him. Controlled withdrawal, timed flanking, encirclement without panic. Everything he taught Rome has been systematized. By the end of the day, the result is clear. Hannibal is not annihilated. He is defeated cleanly, efficiently, without theater. His wrath was extinguished not by superior genius, but by institutional memory. Rome wins. But Rome does not relax. Because victory at Zama does not erase fear. It preserves it. The Republic understands now that enemies like Hannibal do not appear from nowhere. They are produced by conditions, by arrogance, by systems that mistake dominance for permanence. Rome will never allow itself to forget that again. And neither should you. If you are still here, recognize what remains after the killing stops. Not relief, not celebration, memory, fear disciplined into policy. Because the most enduring punishments are not those that end lives. They are the ones that reshape how power thinks forever. Hannibal survives. Not in victory, not in martyrdom. He survives in a way that strips meaning from everything he was. The war ends, but Rome does not grant him the mercy of an ending. It allows him to live. Back in Carthage, Hannibal is no longer a weapon. He becomes an administrator, a statesman, a man expected to fix what war has hollowed out. He reforms finances, cuts corruption, demands accountability from elites who survived by waiting him out. He tries to rebuild a city that now understands it will never be allowed to be powerful again. Rome watches closely. Not because Hannibal is dangerous. Because memory is. Roman paranoia does not fade with victory. It sharpens. Senators imagine Hannibal everywhere, in speeches, in reforms, in numbers on ledgers. They do not fear his armies. They fear his competence. A man who once bent the Republic psychologically cannot be allowed to function normally. So Rome applies pressure without accusation. Envoys arrive, investigations begin, alliances are questioned. Hannibal understands the pattern immediately. He has lived inside it for years. He knows what comes next. Exile. He leaves Carthage at night. No procession, no farewell, just disappearance. A man who once forced empires to move now moves alone, court to court, king to king, always useful, never trusted, welcomed for his mind, watched for his past. He advises foreign rulers who crave his insight but fear his shadow. He plans wars he will never fight. He explains systems he no longer commands. Each step further from Carthage reduces him, not in skill, but in relevance. This is not vengeance. It is containment extended across a lifetime. Hannibal becomes a warning that walks, a story people tell to flatter themselves, a relic paraded when convenient, ignored when not. The world changes around him. New generals rise who know his name, but not his terror. Time finishes what Rome began. Pause here, because this is the punishment most people never consider. To survive the moment you were built for. To live long enough to become an anecdote. If you are still watching, understand this. History does not always destroy its threats. Sometimes it preserves them just long enough to prove they no longer matter. Because the final act is not death. It is disappearance. And that is where the deepest punishments live. Hannibal dies. Not on a battlefield, not in triumph, not in the grand theater of history. He dies quietly in exile, far from the lands where his genius once reshaped empires. A final act of control, his own life ended by his own hand, poison chosen over capture, over humiliation, over continued irrelevance. But death does not absolve him. It does not conclude the story, because the punishment of Hannibal was never about his body. It was about his shadow. It was about the lesson his existence engraved into Rome's mind, that brilliance cannot be allowed to go unchecked, and fear must be codified into law. Rome survives. More than survives, it transforms. The republic that once stumbled under his unpredictability becomes an empire that anticipates every possible rebellion, every distant threat, every nuance of strategy. Standing armies replace citizen militias. Borders are policed relentlessly. Garrisons multiply in places that once seemed safe. Intelligence becomes ritualized. Precaution becomes doctrine. The memory of Hannibal, the man who forced them to question certainty, drives every policy, every levy, every maneuver. The war ends, Hannibal dies, but Rome carries him forever. His tactics, once terrifyingly unpredictable, are studied and systematized by his enemy. His victories are measured, his failures exploited. His lessons are immortalized in fear. He becomes an eternal scar stitched into the psyche of an empire, a warning encoded in every formation, every training exercise, every law. The punishment he endured, containment, exile, irrelevance, and eventual death, was nothing compared to the punishment Rome received, the obligation to remember him forever, to act always as though he could return, to live under the shadow of a genius they could not destroy even in life. Pause here, because this is the final truth most people miss. Hannibal's life ended, but the war never did. Not in the open fields, not in Italy, not in Spain. The war survived him in the form of a transformed Rome, more cautious, more ruthless, more unyielding. And that is the ultimate punishment, to outlive your enemy, to become irrelevant, yet to shape the world so profoundly that survival itself becomes a sentence. If you are still watching, and you have not yet subscribed, consider this carefully. Every story on this channel is designed to confront what most refuse to face. We show punishment as it really was, as it really is, and as it ripples far beyond the individuals who endure it. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history. Because Hannibal may be dead, but the empire he scarred, every lesson, every fear, every structural change is alive, and the punishment continues forever. Hannibal did not destroy Rome. He never needed to. Destruction would have been obvious, brute, immediate. Anyone can topple walls, anyone can spill blood. Hannibal's genius was subtler, more enduring, more insidious. He punished Rome not with armies but with reflection, not with conquest but with inevitability. He forced Rome to confront its own weaknesses, its arrogance, its impatience, its blind reliance on numbers and ritual, and then watched as the Republic adapted. Each humiliation, each slaughter, each psychological torment served a purpose. Fields burned, armies annihilated, brothers executed, civilians terrorized. Yet none of these measures alone broke Rome. What broke Rome and remade it was the lesson Hannibal imparted, that survival demands ruthlessness, that intelligence must be systematized, that fear is an instrument more powerful than steel. By the time Hannibal died, Rome had already absorbed the punishment into its very bones. Standing armies replaced citizen levies, borders were fortified, strategy became doctrine, paranoia became policy. Rome did not merely survive. Rome became something worse, something stronger but colder, something more systematic, more unforgiving, more eternal. Hannibal's victories were temporary, his defeats irrelevant in the arithmetic of campaigns, yet the shadow he cast stretched far beyond life or death. Rome remembered him in every formation, in every command, in every law. He was never just an enemy. He became a teacher, and that is the cruelest punishment of all, to outlive your enemy only to find that what they learned from you is more dangerous than you ever were. So I ask you now, as the story closes and the echoes of war fade into history, was Hannibal Rome's greatest enemy or its greatest teacher? If you are still here, still grappling with the weight of what you have witnessed, let us hear from you. Comment below with your answer. Explain your reasoning. Engage with the discomfort. Stand in the shadow of Hannibal for a moment longer. And if you have not yet subscribed, now is the time. Subscribe to the darkest punishments in history. Because the stories we tell here are not for comfort. They are for confrontation. They are for understanding the forces that shape empires and the punishments that linger long after the dust settles. Hannibal may be gone, but the lessons remain forever.